Before we begin, let me ask you something. Have you ever looked in a mirror and your reflection smiled back when you weren't smiling? Have you ever heard your own voice calling to you from somewhere you know you're not standing? Tonight, I'm bringing you 5 stories, real accounts, real terror. A security guard who watched his reflection try to unlock the door from the inside. A camper who called for help, and something in the woods answered back in his own voice. A father who killed to protect his son, only to realize 20 years later he never stopped paying for it. A room where the air itself grew skin and started building something. And a text message that said just 5 words, "If you're reading this, hide now. But here's what keeps me up at night." These people survived long enough to tell their stories. Most don't. So dim the lights, lock your doors, and whatever you do, don't look in any mirrors until this is over. Story 1. The night shift I took the job because it paid $40 an hour, and all I had to do was sit in a booth and watch a monitor. No experience required. The only catch: I had to work the 10 p.m. to 4 a.m. shift at Site 9, a service tunnel cut into the side of a mountain in the middle of nowhere. On my first night, my supervisor Miller handed me a laminated sheet of paper. He looked like he hadn't slept since the 90s. "Don't lose this," he said, "and don't get creative. If the rules say sit, you sit." I laughed, thinking he was just old school. Then I read the rules. Rule 1. Keep the gate closed. No vehicles are authorized to enter or exit between 11 p.m. and 3:30 a.m. If a car approaches, do not speak to the driver. Turn off your booth lights and look at the floor until they leave. Rule 2. Ignore the scraping. The tunnel is concrete. Concrete doesn't breathe. If you hear rhythmic scraping coming from the tunnel vent, turn up the radio. Rule 3. The 2 a.m. check. At exactly 2 a.m., a man in a yellow high-visibility vest will walk out of the tunnel. He will ask you for a cigarette. Give him one. Do not look at his hands. He doesn't have fingers. Rule 4. The mirror rule. If you see your own reflection in the booth window and it's smiling while you are not, leave the booth immediately and stand in the rain. It doesn't like the rain. I sat there for the first few hours listening to the wind. At 11:15 p.m., a black SUV pulled up to the gate. I almost opened my mouth to ask for ID, but I remembered Rule 1. I killed the lights and stared at my boots. The driver started honking. Then, the honking turned into a scream, a loud, mechanical screeching that sounded like metal being torn apart. It lasted for 10 minutes. When I finally looked up, the SUV was gone. There were no tire tracks in the dirt. At 1:30 a.m., the scraping started. Scritch, scritch, scritch. It was coming from the air vent right above my head. It sounded like someone was trying to sharpen their fingernails on the inside of the metal grate. I turned my radio to a static-filled rock station and cranked it until my ears hurt. Then came 2 a.m. The man in the yellow vest walked out of the darkness of the tunnel. He moved with a strange, jerky gait, like a puppet on strings. He tapped on the glass. I reached into my pocket, pulled out a Marlboro, and slid it through the tray at the bottom. "Got a light?" he rasped. I kept my eyes locked on his chin. As he reached for the cigarette, I saw his hands out of the corner of my eye. They weren't hands. They were long, pale stalks of bone, sharpened to fine points. That's what the scraping was. "Thanks," he said, and he turned back into the tunnel. I was shaking, but I figured I was almost done. Only 2 hours left. I leaned back inside, looking at the window. The reflection of the booth was clear in the dark glass. I saw the desk, the radio, and myself. My reflection was leaning forward. It was grinning so wide that the corners of its mouth reached its ears. It raised a hand with 5 normal fingers, and began to slowly unlock the booth door from the inside. I didn't think. I bolted. I threw the door open and ran out into the freezing downpour. I stood there, drenched to the bone, staring into the booth. My reflection was still inside, standing where I had been, staring at me through the glass with that horrific smile. It looked disappointed. I stayed in the rain until 4 a.m. when Miller showed up. He didn't ask why I was wet. He just looked at the booth, then at me. "Good job," he muttered. "Most people don't make it past the cigarette guy. I quit that morning. I didn't even wait for my paycheck." But now, every time I look in a mirror, my reflection is just a second too slow to follow my movements. And sometimes, when it's quiet at night, I hear a faint scritch, scritch, scritch coming from the vents in my apartment. I think I brought something back with me. Or maybe the reflection that left the booth wasn't me at all. Story 2. The air grew skin. It all began with a tingling, like static electricity was spilling into my room from everywhere. Spectral tides teased my little hairs to standing. Then something spitter sparked in the corner of my vision. It seemed as if the floor had belched up great clouds of glitter, or my ceiling had dissolved, and that substance was raining down. But the glitter wasn't moving at all, only sprouting twinkling filigree, tracery that stretched and interacted until strange corridors were born, even as my walls dissolved to accommodate them. Upon those outlines grew bones, then muscles and veins, all interwoven together. I had just enough time to see patchwork skin, knitted from all human ages and ethnicities, plus all sorts of organisms I'm not quite sure of, slither into existence and constrict around me before all went dark. There's now some kind of resonance in the air, nearly mechanical, that makes my ears want to seal over. I'm posting this as fast as I can, then I'll call 911. Update. Okay, I called the cops, and they said they'd send someone to my house, but that was hours ago. I'll try them again soon, I guess. Shining my phone's flashlight on that which entombs me, I've seen apple-sized segments of flesh opening up into amoeba-shaped orifices, beyond which sounds something sub-audible. Update. I can hear them now, whispering in English, Japanese, Spanish, and other languages that at least sound human. Prisoners all, hundreds of them maybe. But the English slang that some speak is either archaic or unknown to me. More disturbing are the bellows and grunts that could indicate evolutionary throwbacks, and the various shades of buzzing of what could be extraterrestrials. Such suffering in the air. I can hardly hear my own. Should I shine my flashlight into the holes between my prison and others? Can I risk drawing attention to myself? I called the cops again and they claimed I was pranking them. Let me think on this for a while. Update. I've done it. Somehow, my eyes haven't dissolved and streamed down my face yet. There are fates far worse in store for them, maybe. I've seen it building itself, you see, picking its victims apart with yards-long, rotating fingers. Choice tidbits, ears, eyes, inner organs, hair, whatever it incorporates into its vast self. The rest it feeds to ravening shadows. Some kind of messed up commensalism, I guess. Update. The entity with its constellation network of eyes framed by peacock feathers, with its long, spiraling limbs built of impossible jointage, the continent that slithers, lets the tension build. The orifices between it and me are widening. By the light of my phone's screen, I see the lines in my palms and the prints on my fingers begin to eddy. What did we ever think we were doing? We learned to love each other and assumed that, ultimately, that would be enough. But what will we be when we're no longer ourselves? Will enough of our minds survive to recognize what's been done to us? Will our spirits be reknitted too? My phone's dying anyway. 2% charge and fading. This'll be my last update. Honestly, I no longer see the point of them. But hey, parts of me might visit you soon. Story 3. Something answered. I'm writing this with my right ankle wrapped so tight my toes keep going numb. The urgent care doctor called it a moderate sprain, like that phrase makes it feel smaller. My left forearm has bruises shaped like fingers, too long to look right. The nurse didn't say that part out loud, but her eyes did. I went camping to get away from people. I ended up begging one for directions over a radio, and by the end of the night, I wasn't sure the voice on the other end was a person at all. I want to be clear about something up front. I wasn't out there trying to test myself. I'm not a survival guy. I wasn't hunting for creepy stories. I had a reservation and a map and enough food for one night. I picked a back loop because the main campground was full of headlights, barking dogs, and Bluetooth speakers. The evening was normal. That's the part I keep coming back to. Around 9, when the air got cold and damp, I realized my headlamp wasn't in my pack. I'd left it in the car. The car was parked at a small pull-off a couple miles back. I told myself it was a quick walk. I had my phone light. The trail was straightforward, 15 minutes in and out. I took my keys, my phone, and without thinking much about it, the little handheld radio I'd brought just in case. It was a cheap black unit with a stubby antenna and a screen that glowed green. The first part of the walk was fine. My phone light made the trail look like a tunnel, and everything beyond it was just shadow and bark. 10 minutes in, I passed a reflective trail marker nailed to a tree. I remember thinking, good, I'm still on something official. Another 10 minutes and I still hadn't hit the pull-off. I slowed down, then stopped. I swung my light down and saw something that made my stomach drop. My own boot prints, faint in the dust, curving off the trail and back toward where I'd come from. Not a clean loop like a track, a sloppy arc. I had been walking in a circle without realizing it. I checked the time. 10:18 p.m. That was when I remembered the radio. I turned it on. The screen lit up. Static hissed softly. I pressed the transmit button. Ranger Station, this is a camper on the back loop. I'm lost. I'm on Trail 6 somewhere, I think. I'm trying to get back to the entrance. Do you copy? Static, then a click like someone keying a mic. A voice came through, flattened by the speaker, calm enough to make my shoulders sag with relief. Copy. Stand by. I let out a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. Thank you, I said. I parked at a pull-off by a gated service road. Brown sign, map case. I walked out to grab my headlamp and I looped. I can't find the spur back. Another pause. Behind the voice, I could hear a faint background sound like wind hitting a building. Describe what you see, the voice said. It sounded like a man, middle-aged, the kind of voice you'd expect from someone who's given directions for a living. Not hurried, not annoyed. Evergreens, I said. Packed dirt trail. I'm at a fork. Left looks wider, right looks narrow and drops down. Take the right, he said. I stared at the fork. The left side looked like the main trail. The right looked like an animal path. The right is smaller, I said. Are you sure? Yes, he said, immediate. Right will put you on the access road. I turned right. As I walked, I narrated what I could. A fallen limb, a patch of damp ground. The slope. The radio clicked again. Keep your light low, the voice said. What? Keep it low, he repeated. Do not swing it around. That made no sense. Every safety pamphlet I'd ever seen said the opposite. Make yourself visible. Stay put. Conserve battery. Signal. I should have stopped right there. Instead, I did what he said. I pointed the beam at my feet. A minute later, he asked, do you hear water? I stopped and listened. No, do you hear anything else? He asked. The question was too open, too curious. It didn't sound like someone trying to locate me. It sounded like someone checking whether I was alone. Just woods, I said. Why? Static. Then, softly, keep moving. My phone battery ticked down. 20%. 18. That's when I saw the reflective marker again, except it wasn't on a tree, it was on the ground. A small rectangle of reflective tape in the dirt, like it had been torn off and dropped. The soil around it looked scraped, disturbed. I crouched without thinking and touched it with 2 fingers. The tape was damp and cold. The radio clicked. "Don't touch that," the voice said. I froze mid-crouch. "How did you?" I started, then swallowed it. He couldn't see me. He couldn't. I stood up slowly, heart thudding. "Ranger," I said, "what's your name?" A pause long enough for the static to fill my head. "You don't need that," the voice said. Behind me, somewhere off the trail, something moved. Not a squirrel, not a deer. It was too measured, too heavy. Footsteps. "Ranger," I said quietly, "there's something behind me." The voice on the radio didn't sound surprised. "I know," it said. My mouth went dry. I lifted the light anyway and swung it toward the sound. The beam caught tree trunks, low brush, a tangle of branches. Nothing obvious. And the moment my light moved, the footsteps stopped. "Who is this?" I said into the radio, and my voice cracked on the last word. Static surged, then cut suddenly, cleanly, like someone had switched channels. Then I heard my own voice come back at me through the speaker. "Who is this?" Same cadence, same crack, same tiny breath at the end. It wasn't a recording quality. It wasn't muffled like a replay. It was like someone had taken my words and thrown them right back. I jerked the radio away from my face like it had burned me. The voice returned, calm again, but different now. Less like a person. More like someone wearing a person's tone. "Don't raise your voice," it said. "Keep moving." My chest tightened. The trail ahead looked narrower than before, less maintained. The smell changed too. A sourness under the pine, like wet fur and old meat. My phone light flickered. "Ranger," I said, trying to keep my voice steady, "I'm going back to the fork. The left trail is wider." The radio clicked so fast it felt like an interruption. "No," the voice said, sharp. "Do not go back." At the same moment, the sound behind me changed. It wasn't footsteps anymore. It was a dry, rapid clicking, like someone trying to speak through a throat that didn't work right. I swung the light again. This time the beam caught it. Between 2 trees, half hidden, a shape that was too tall to be a deer and too thin to be a bear. It was standing upright, but not like a person stands. Its posture was wrong. Its torso was narrow and too long. Its arms hung low, almost to its knees. The head was the worst part. It looked like skin pulled tight over something sharp. The top had uneven ridges like bone pushing out from inside. 2 dull, reflective points caught my light, not bright like animal eyes, but wet and heavy. It tilted its head. Then it took 1 step toward me. Not loud, not charging, just a single, confident step that erased distance too quickly. I ran. The trail pitched down and twisted. My phone light bounced wildly. Behind me, I heard movement through brush that didn't sound panicked. It sounded like it knew exactly where it was going. The radio in my fist hissed. "Don't run," the voice said. It didn't sound worried. It sounded irritated, like I'd stopped playing the game correctly. My phone light died in the middle of a step. 1 second I had a cone of visibility, the next I was in full dark. I nearly face-planted. My arms flailed. My foot caught a root. I stumbled, recovered, and kept moving with only the green glow of the radio screen. The creature's clicking breath stayed with me. Sometimes louder, sometimes fainter, like it was pacing me from the side. The trail dipped hard. My foot hit something slick. I went down on my hands and knees. Pain shot up my right wrist like a spark. My knee slammed a root. I bit my tongue and tasted blood. I pushed up fast, panicked, and my right ankle rolled on loose needles. A clean, sharp pain climbed my leg and almost took me down again. I couldn't put my full weight on that foot anymore. Behind me, the clicking stopped. For 1 breathless second, I thought maybe it had paused. Maybe it had decided I wasn't worth it. Then I felt it behind me, not in a mystical way. In the way you feel a person standing too close in an elevator, air pressure, heat, presence. I turned, lifting the radio screen like a useless flashlight. The green glow caught a piece of its face and shoulder. Up close it wasn't just thin, it looked damaged. Skin torn and healed wrong, like something had ripped it, and it had closed back up without care. The mouth was pulled too wide, lips stretched tight, teeth crowded and uneven like they'd grown in wrong. It reached toward me with those long, jointed fingers. I swung the radio at it as hard as I could. Plastic cracked against something solid. The radio flew out of my hand and skittered into the dark. The creature didn't flinch. It grabbed my left forearm. The grip wasn't wet or slimy like horror movies. It was cold and dry like grabbing a dead branch. The pressure was immediate, crushing. Pain bloomed so fast it turned my vision white. I screamed. I yanked back, twisting. It dragged me a step like I weighed nothing. Its fingers tightened, and I felt something in my arm give in a way that made me nauseous. My free hand fumbled in my jacket pocket and found the one thing I'd thrown in there without thinking: a cheap road flare. I'd packed it because it was small and because I'd told myself, it can't hurt. My fingers shook so badly I almost dropped it. I popped the cap, scraped the tip, and for half a second nothing happened and I thought I'd just died doing something stupid. Then it lit. A violent red flame, hissing, bright enough to turn the trees into hard-edged black silhouettes. The creature jerked back like the light hit it physically. Its grip loosened. Not a full release, but enough. I ripped my arm free and stumbled backward, holding the flare out between us like a spear. In the red light I saw more of it, legs too long. Knees bending in a way that looked half backwards. Skin mottled like bruises under thin flesh. Dark stains around its mouth that weren't fresh but weren't old enough to be nothing. It didn't charge. It watched the flare with the same tilted head curiosity, clicking softly. Then it did something that snapped the situation into a new, colder shape. It looked past the flare, down at the ground, toward where the radio had slid. It took a slow step toward it, careful, like it didn't want to get close to the flare. Another step. It wasn't focused on me. It wanted the radio. My throat tightened. I backed away, flare held out, and realized the ranger voice hadn't been trying to save me. It had been trying to keep me moving, keep me talking, keep me transmitting, like a lure, like a line it could follow. The creature crouched, long limbs folding wrong, and picked up the radio with those stick-like fingers. It turned it over as if it understood what it was holding. Then the radio clicked, and from the speaker, not from my hand now but from the thing's hand, came the voice again. Calm, patient, describe what you see. The creature lifted its head, still holding the radio, and the dull, reflective points of its eyes turned to me. I felt my stomach drop through the floor. I didn't wait to see what it would do next. I turned and limped away as fast as my ankle would let me, flare burning down in my hand, my left arm throbbing and numb where it had grabbed me. The clicking breath moved with me, not rushing, not fading, just staying close enough to remind me it could. I forced myself to follow the trail, because stepping off into the trees felt like stepping off a dock at night. You don't know what you'll hit until you do. Ahead through the trees, I saw something angular and straight. A signpost. I limped toward it and almost cried when I saw the reflective letters catch the flare light. Trail 6, Service Road 0.4, Ranger Station 1.2. My brain snagged on that last line. Ranger Station. Deeper. Not out. The flare hissed lower. The light dimmed. From off to my right through the trees, I heard the radio again. A little burst of static. A click. Then my own voice, thin and distant, as if someone had learned the shape of it and was practicing. Ranger Station, do you copy? I froze. The sound didn't come from behind. It came from the side, like it was trying to draw my attention off the trail, toward the trees, toward the direction that sign said Ranger Station. My chest tightened hard enough to hurt. I turned my face away from the sound and forced my feet to move toward Service Road 0.4. Every step on that ankle was a bright spike of pain. The flare died with a wet sputter. Darkness swallowed everything. I stood still for a second because my eyes were useless and my panic was loud. Then I heard it again. The clicking breath, closer, patient. I moved. I walked by feel, hands out, fingertips catching branches, following the faint line of packed dirt underfoot. The radio crackled in the trees. Sometimes it was static. Sometimes it was my voice repeating the same few words. Sometimes it was that calm ranger voice saying, "You're almost there." After what felt like an hour but was probably 10 minutes, the ground changed under my boots. Gravel, then flat, hard packed gravel, a road. I stepped forward and the tree line opened just enough that I could make out a darker shape ahead. A metal gate. I stumbled to it and grabbed it with both hands like it was a lifeline. The metal was cold. I pressed my forehead to it and pulled in air that tasted like rust and sap. Behind me, the radio static swelled. Close. I turned slowly. I couldn't see it in the dark, but I could hear it. The clicking breath, a soft scrape of something moving through brush just off the road, staying in the cover of trees. The radio clicked. "Open the gate," the voice said. It didn't sound like a ranger anymore. It sounded strained, like the words were being forced out through a mouth that didn't fit them. "I can't," I whispered. "Open it," the voice repeated, and under the words the clicking breath accelerated, excited. I backed away from the gate, then stopped, because backing away meant stepping closer to the sound. I stood in the middle of the service road, gravel under my boots, and tried to think. Staying still felt like waiting to be taken. I chose movement. I limped down the road, faster than my ankle wanted, gravel crunching underfoot. To my right in the tree line, something moved with me, quiet and effortless. Every few seconds, the radio voice tried a new angle. "Turn back. You're going the wrong way. Your car is not there." Then softer, using my voice again, like it was trying to sound concerned. Hey, where are you?" I didn't answer. I bit down on my tongue and kept moving. The road curved, the trees thinned, and then ahead I saw the faint outline of a vehicle, my car. I almost fell from relief. My hands shook so badly I dropped my keys once, then found them by feel and hit the unlock button. The beep sounded like the best noise I've ever heard. I got the driver's door open and folded into the seat, dragging my bad ankle in like it didn't belong to me. Pain flashed up my leg. I slammed the door and locked it. For a second, I sat there in the dark, breathing hard, staring straight ahead like that would keep me safe. Then I looked at my side mirror. At the edge of the pull-off where gravel met trees, something stood half hidden in the brush. Tall, too thin, motionless. In one hand, a small green glow, my radio. It lifted the radio slightly, as if showing it to me. Then the speaker crackled, and the voice that came out was mine, careful and patient, exactly the way I'd sounded when I thought help was real. "Ranger Station, do you copy?" I turned the key. The engine coughed, then caught. The dashboard lit up. The headlights snapped on, bright white, flooding the pull-off. The brush at the edge of the trees was empty. No movement, no shape, no glowing radio, just branches and shadow. I didn't wait. I threw the car into reverse, gravel spraying, and drove like I was late for my own funeral. The ranger who helped me later told me something that still makes my blood run cold. "Dispatch got weird traffic tonight," he said. "On that channel. We thought it was interference at first." "What kind of traffic?" I asked. He rubbed his jaw like he didn't want to say it. "A man asking for help," he said finally, saying he was lost, saying he was on Trail 6. My stomach dropped. "That was me," I whispered. He shook his head once. "No," he said. "It started before you called. And it kept going after you stopped." 2 days later, I found something in my backpack that I can't explain. Tucked into the smallest inside pocket, the one I never use, I found a strip of reflective tape, the same kind that had been on the ground. Damp. Cold, even though it had been inside my apartment for days. When I held it up to the light, I saw something stuck to the adhesive. A single dark hair, coarse and stiff, like it didn't belong to any animal I know. And later that night, lying in bed with my ankle throbbing and my arm bruised, I heard a sound that made my whole body lock up. A soft burst of static. A click, not from outside, not from the woods, from somewhere in my apartment, close enough that I could hear the tiny speaker distortion. Then very quietly, my own voice, patient and calm, asking the same question it asked the night I thought help was real. Ranger Station, do you copy? Story 4. 20 years ago, my wife and I made a mistake that would haunt us for the rest of our lives. It was a cold night in February. An argument ensued between my wife and son, and things got out of hand. My wife had smacked my son, hard, multiple times while he screamed. The boy was only 9 years old when this happened, and I could see in his face, the moment the first hit landed, that he would be traumatized for years to come. His eyes welled up with tears, and his wails became deafening. I tried to intervene and was shoved away while she pummeled his face. Her open palm closed into a fist, and I could see that blood had begun to spill from his lips and nostrils. After a few more punches, my son stopped moving. Then after a few more, his chest stopped rising up and down rhythmically. My wife, in her drunken state, shook him violently, proclaiming, "Get up, you little brat. You know you're faking. Now stop begging for attention." My son remained still. This prompted 2 more slaps from my intoxicated wife while I stared on like a coward. "I'm not gonna ask you again, you shit. Get up and go clean your room." As the last word escaped her lips, I finally found the power to speak, though timidly. "Honey, I don't think he's getting up this time," she interrupted. "He's done this before, you've seen it." Just before she could take one last swipe at our son, she shot up straight, hiccuped, and announced, "Have to pee," before stumbling towards our bathroom. I stayed there, staring at my son's lifeless body that was now surrounded by blood on our living room floor. I wept silently, my mind racing 1,000,000 miles a minute, circling the same thought. How are we going to get out of this? As I knelt over my son, letting my tears fall to his chest as I begged for his forgiveness, I could hear my wife snoring in our bedroom. This broke something within me. I stopped crying. I stopped feeling. I stopped being sorry for myself. My wife had just beaten our son to death while I watched on, refusing to put an end to it. I was an accomplice. I was going to jail no matter what, but justice would not be even in this case. My actions compared to my wife's were absolutely minimal. But I guess that's where the problem arises. I felt a moral decay come over me as I inched closer and closer to our bedroom. I found my wife in a pool of her own urine, blackout drunk on the bed that I paid for. I'm sure you can see where this is going, but I guess I should explain what happened. See, I couldn't find it within myself to bludgeon my wife, nor could I find it within myself to let her walk away from this. I'm uncomfortable with confrontation, and I hate blood. Why do you think I froze when everything was unraveling? But I needed to make her pay for this. Grabbing one of the pillows, I pressed firmly against her face. Once I started, I felt the anger in me rise to a boil, and before I could even realize, I was holding the pillow against my wife's face with all the force I could muster, while she kicked and flailed like a dying animal. That's what she was, a dying animal. Once she stopped moving, I couldn't help but feel a hint of irony. "Get up, you shit, I know you're faking," I whispered into her ear. I left the room calmly and went to the kitchen to brew a fresh pot of tea. If I was going to prison, I was at least going to make sure I got to enjoy one last delicacy before I was behind bars. As I sat on the couch in front of my son, I dialed up 911 and I told them plainly, "My name is Donovan Meeks. My wife murdered my son, and I've just murdered my wife," before providing them with an address. I sat and waited for what felt like mere moments before the sounds of police sirens came echoing from down the street, and my living room became illuminated with flashing red and blue lights. When the knocking started, I answered the door as calmly as could be and surrendered without a fight. Two police officers went inside the house to investigate and returned a few moments later with grim looks on their faces. One of them asked me what happened, and I explained it to them verbatim. The coroners arrived, and just as I was being taken away in a police car, I heard a paramedic scream from my front porch. "The boy's still alive. We need to get him to the ambulance now." I couldn't believe what I heard, and the sheer shock of the news snapped me out of my psychosis as I began to sob once again. I was sentenced to 20 years. A full life sentence was off the table due to what my lawyers defined as temporary insanity brought on by a traumatic event. That's where I spent these last 2 decades. Rotting away in a cell, forced to think about my actions. However, today was my release date, and I couldn't have been more thrilled to finally get out of my cage. My house had been completely paid off prior to my conviction, and I looked forward to finally being able to have a normal roof over my head again, even if it was the one that sheltered us when my family fell apart. Once my driver entered the neighborhood, I grew a little nervous when I noticed that there were 2 cars parked in my driveway. I got out of the car regardless, and when I knocked on the door, my son answered. The same son who refused to visit me, the son who acted like I didn't even exist, the son that I killed over and threw my life away for. He didn't even give me the time of day. He opened the door just enough to peek at me through a crack, before slamming it shut and screaming for me to go away. I could hear what sounded to be a crying toddler from beyond the door, as well as hushed whispers between my son and his wife, I assume. I felt that feeling come over me again. That boiling rage that took over when I killed my wife. I tried to stifle it, but I couldn't. I'd been through too much to be shut out by some little brat and his family. I began kicking the door as hard as I could until I could feel the hinges breaking with each blow. The baby's screams grew louder as my son and his wife begged me to stop, but I couldn't. With one final kick, the door fell off its hinges and I was greeted face to face with a barrel of a gun. In my own home, held by my own son, who I had avenged all those years ago. He had the nerve to ask me to leave. I had the nerve to ask him what he was gonna do with the rifle in his hand. In response, he cocked back the hammer and announced he was gonna give me one more chance. I could see that his wife was on the phone with who I assumed was 911. I was going to jail regardless. I won't tell you what ensued, but I will tell you that my son's wife has an impeccable taste for tea, and enjoying it while I wait is absolutely remarkable. Especially without the cries of that damned baby. Story 5. Hide now. That was the first text message I got that morning. If you're reading this, hide now. It came from an unknown number. No name. No emoji. No follow-up. Just those 5 words, all caps, like the sender was afraid of being overheard even through a phone. For a few seconds, I sat up in bed, staring at the screen while my alarm continued to chirp beside me. The early light filtering through my blinds gave my room its usual harmless look. Laundry on the chair, posters peeling at the corners, my backpack slumped against the wall. Everything normal, everything safe. I checked the time. 6:14 a.m. I laughed, one sharp breath through my nose. A prank, spam, someone messing with me. My friends thought it was funny to send creepy stuff sometimes, especially before exams. Still, my thumb hovered over the keyboard longer than it should have. "Who is this?" I typed. The message showed as delivered. No response. I tossed the phone onto my bed and stood up, stretching. I had school, a math test, a bus to catch. The real world didn't pause for anonymous texts. As I brushed my teeth, I kept glancing at my reflection, half expecting to see something different. Someone standing behind me, a shadow that didn't belong to me. Nothing. By the time I was dressed, the message had faded into the background noise of my mind, unsettling but distant. I grabbed my phone again as I headed downstairs. Another message had come in. They know you saw the first one. My stomach dropped so suddenly it felt like I'd missed a step on the stairs. Mom, I called, my voice cracking in a way I didn't like. In the kitchen, she answered, cheerful, unaware. I stood frozen halfway down the stairs, staring at the screen. My phone buzzed again. You have 3 minutes. 3 minutes for what? I whispered. I typed again, hands shaking now. Who are they? The response came instantly. Not who. What? A chill crept up my arms. I suddenly became aware of every sound in the house. The hum of the refrigerator, the tick of the clock, my mom humming softly to herself. I went into the kitchen, trying to act normal. My mom slid a plate of toast toward me. You look pale, she said. Did you sleep? Yeah, I lied. My phone buzzed on the counter. 2 minutes. I swallowed hard. Mom, did you get any weird messages this morning? She frowned. No. Why? Another buzz. They're closer than you think. My chest tightened. I think someone's messing with me. My mom sighed, already reaching for her coffee. Sweetheart, if it's a prank, ignore it. You'll miss your bus. The phone vibrated again. 1 minute. I felt lightheaded. Mom, I think we should. The lights flickered. Just once, quick, like a blink, my mom looked up. Probably the storm last night. The phone buzzed again. 30 seconds, closet, bathroom, anywhere without windows. Do not be seen. My heart slammed against my ribs. This was too specific, too urgent. I grabbed my phone and backed away from the counter. Mom, please, we need to go somewhere else in the house. She stared at me, confused now. What's going on? The lights flickered again. Longer this time. My phone buzzed. They're here. A sound came from outside, not a knock, not footsteps. A low, dragging scrape like something heavy being pulled across concrete. My mom turned toward the front door. Did someone? Don't open it, I said, louder than I meant to. She froze. What? The scrape came again, closer, accompanied by something else now. A faint clicking, irregular like nails tapping out of sync. My phone buzzed nonstop, messages stacking faster than I could read. Do not let them see you, THEY mimic hide. Now the doorbell rang. It wasn't the cheerful chime we'd always had. It was distorted, buzzing too long, like someone was leaning on it. Mom, I whispered, tears burning my eyes, please. She took a step back from the door. The doorbell stopped. Silence. Then a voice came from the other side. Hello, it called. It sounded exactly like my mom. She gasped. I felt something inside me snap, a cold understanding settling in. The voice spoke again. It's me. I forgot my keys. My mom covered her mouth with her hand. The phone buzzed once more. That is not her. The handle on the door slowly began to turn. I grabbed my mom's wrist and pulled her toward the hallway. We ran, slipping on the tile, my heart pounding so loud I was sure it could hear us. Behind us, the front door creaked open. Footsteps entered the house. Slow, careful, learning. We dove into the bathroom and slammed the door, locking it just as something brushed against the hallway wall. I dragged my mom into the bathtub and yanked the shower curtain closed, then turned off the lights. We huddled there in the dark, barely breathing. The footsteps moved closer. The bathroom door handle jiggled. Then a voice, my voice, spoke softly from just outside. I know you're scared, it's okay. You can come out now. My mom clutched my arm so hard it hurt. The handle stopped moving. Silence stretched, heavy and unbearable. Minutes passed, or hours, I couldn't tell. My phone buzzed faintly in my hand. Good, stay still. They lose interest if they can't confirm you. I typed with trembling fingers. What are they? The response came slower this time. We don't know. They appear, they copy, they replace. We only know how to survive them. Another message followed. You weren't the first one we warned. A sudden crash came from the living room. The sound of something being knocked over, followed by that same dragging scrape. Then footsteps moved toward the back door. The house fell quiet again. We stayed hidden until the sun was fully up, until my phone battery dipped into the red, until the fear dulled enough for exhaustion to take over. Eventually, we heard sirens outside. Neighbors gathering, someone shouting about a break-in. The police said there was no sign of forced entry. They said nothing was missing. They said maybe someone had just walked into the wrong house. That night, after everything settled, after my mom finally fell asleep on the couch beside me, I plugged in my phone and scrolled back through the messages. The number was gone, not deleted, gone. No sender, no record, like it had never existed, except for one final message, time-stamped hours after the others. "We'll text again if you survive tomorrow." I locked my phone and stared at the dark window across the room. Outside, someone was standing on the sidewalk, watching the house, smiling with my face. You made it through. 5 stories. 5 warnings. The security guard who can still hear scraping in his apartment vents. The camper whose radio is still out there, being used by something that learned his voice. The father sitting in his son's house right now, drinking tea, waiting for the police. The person trapped inside a living structure made of stolen human parts. And the teenager who survived one day only to receive another text the next morning. You know what all these stories have in common? They all started normal. A regular night shift, a camping trip, a family dinner, a morning alarm just Tuesday. Because that's the thing about real horror. It doesn't announce itself. It doesn't wait for you to be ready. It just starts. And by the time you realize something's wrong, you're already in too deep. If you made it this far, do me a favor. Hit that like button. Subscribe if you want more stories like these. And drop a comment telling me which story messed you up the most. The mirror, the mimic in the woods, the one that's still happening right now. And hey, check your notifications. Because I post these every week. Same time, same place. And trust me, you'll want to know what's coming. Oh, and one more thing. If you're watching this alone in the dark and you suddenly feel like someone's standing behind you, don't turn around too fast. Sometimes it's better not to know. Actually, you know what? Go ahead. Look behind you. Nothing there, right? Good. But just to be safe, maybe sleep with the lights on tonight. See you next week, if you survive tomorrow.